From the time Tracy Reiner was just 7 years old, she called Rob Reiner her dad, and she meant every word. That title wasn't just handed out. It was earned through years of trust, care, and the kind of love that makes a kid feel truly at home. Tracy wasn't simply welcomed into Rob's life. She became his first daughter in spirit, the one he proudly supported, guided, and introduced to the film world with both small and meaningful roles. Just one day before everything took a heartbreaking turn, Tracy sat across from Rob at the dinner table in their cozy Brentwood home. They laughed, swapped stories, and talked about old memories. Everything felt peaceful, like nothing could ever break that bond. It was one of those moments that feels safe forever. Until suddenly, the next day, everything changed when Rob's life came to an unexpected end. That loss hit their whole family like a storm. But what made it even more painful was learning that the situation somehow connected back to someone inside the family. Nick, the son Rob had always tried to protect and guide through tough times. Tracy stayed quiet at first, lost in grief and disbelief. But that silence couldn't last once people online started spreading false stories, twisting Rob's image into something completely untrue. That's when Tracy knew she had to speak up. She stepped forward to share the truth about Rob Reiner, the real man who gave her a family, loved her with no conditions, and made sure she always felt like his own. She told the world about the father who held her hand, stood beside her through everything, and made sure she was a part of his legacy forever. Not as a statement, but as the truth. "You have always been my daughter." Those words weren't about fame or money. They were about love, belonging, and what it really means to be family. Her voice trembled but never broke, carrying the weight of years of devotion and loss. Tracy didn't speak out of anger when it came to Nick. She spoke out of honesty. She opened up about the heartbreak of watching someone her father cared so deeply become connected to such a devastating loss. It was a truth few dared to name, but one she carried on her shoulders alone. After the tragedy on December 14, 2025, when Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner lost their lives at their Brentwood home, Tracy was left in a silence so deep it felt endless. The man who had chosen her as his daughter back in 1971, the man who taught her what trust and love really meant, was suddenly gone, leaving her world spinning. Barely holding herself together, Tracy faced the cameras with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I come from the greatest family I've ever known. I don't know what else to say. I'm in shock." That single sentence said everything. It was raw, real, and full of heartbreak. But the pain didn't end there. When Tracy later checked social media, she was met with cold, cruel words that felt like another blow. People online reduced her father to political debates and twisted comments that stripped away his humanity. Some even showed a disturbing lack of empathy, and that hurt more than anything. Each post felt like reopening a wound that hadn't even begun to heal. They never saw the real moments, the simple ones. They never saw Rob Reiner in the kitchen asking, "Did you eat? Are you tired? Do you need your dad right now?" Those were the quiet, loving gestures that made him more than a father figure. He was home. Tracy sat alone in that same house, clutching an old framed photo of Rob carrying her when she was just 7. That was the day he chose her, not through blood, but through love. He gave her his name, his care, and a place where she truly belonged. That memory brought both tears and fire. It hurt to see strangers tearing apart the moments that meant everything to her. The anger wasn't about gossip. It was about people who never knew how gentle, patient, and protective Rob Reiner really was as a dad. So Tracy spoke out once more, not to fight, but to tell the truth. Through tears, she said, "If people only remember my dad through controversy, then let me say this. My dad loved us with everything he had." This wasn't some public defense. It was her truth, her testimony. Every word brought her back to that first day, a little girl looking up at a man who knelt down, smiled, and changed her whole life forever. Tracy Reiner was born in 1964 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. A childhood that felt quiet and sometimes incomplete. Many of her early years were spent at her grandparents' home, surrounded by routine and long silences. Her biological parents were often away, chasing their own paths, while Penny Marshall, her mom, worked tirelessly to build her career in Hollywood. Those early years felt like endless waiting for a call, for a weekend visit, for the simple comfort of knowing someone would show up. Anytime Tracy asked about her father, the room would fall silent, and it was in that silence that everything slowly changed. Because soon after, someone finally chose her. From a young age, Tracy learned to stay quiet, careful, and easy to please, as if she was afraid of taking up too much space. She went through childhood trying to not be a burden, always watching, always hoping, and praying she wouldn't be left behind again. Then came 1971, the year everything shifted. That's when Penny Marshall married Rob Reiner, and for little Tracy, he first appeared like a stranger, tall, calm, and steady, with a warmth that instantly felt different. His voice was gentle but strong, and whenever he spoke to her, he bent down to her level, making sure she felt seen and heard. There was no distance, no awkwardness, just quiet kindness that wrapped her like safety. Only months after the wedding, on April 10, 1972, Rob made it official. He adopted Tracy when she was just 7 years old. There were no bright lights, no big crowd, no fancy flowers, but to Tracy, that day meant everything. It wasn't about paperwork, it was about finally belonging. When she took the Reiner name, she didn't yet understand what adoption really meant in a legal sense, but she felt it deep in her heart. She felt chosen, she felt safe, and she felt loved in a way she'd never known before. Rob placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, speaking softly so the moment would last forever. "From now on, you're my daughter, Tracy. I'll always be here for you." From that moment on, calling him Dad felt completely natural. No hesitation, no doubt, just love. Throughout the 1970s, Tracy grew up in the Reiner Marshall home in Los Angeles, a place bursting with laughter, creativity, and the constant hum of film talk. The house was full of scripts, inside jokes, and warmth that made it feel alive. Rob often brought Tracy to the set of All in the Family, letting her sit on his lap between takes. He'd flash a grin and joke, "I play the meathead on TV, but in real life I'm actually pretty smart." Tracy would giggle every time, gripping his hand and feeling safe even in a world filled with bright lights and adult chaos. No matter how busy life got, Rob always made time for her. He read her bedtime stories, listened to her half-finished school tales, and never brushed off her feelings. In the backyard, he taught her how to throw a baseball. Even when the ball just rolled off her fingers and dropped at her feet, he'd smile and say, "That's okay, you're learning." Without even realizing it, he was teaching her something far deeper, that love doesn't need perfection, it just needs to keep showing up. By the late 1970s, as Tracy grew older and started to see the world more clearly, she understood something powerful. Rob Reiner wasn't just her mom's husband, he was her person, the one who listened to every question, every worry, and even the things she didn't know how to put into words. "You just need to be Tracy." Those simple words became her anchor, something she carried deep inside for years. By 1980, Tracy was a student at the Lycée Français de Los Angeles, and with her trademark determination, she pulled off something big, organizing the school's first ever prom at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The ballroom sparkled with lights, music, and excitement, but Rob stayed quietly in the background, watching with pride. He had shown up early, as he always did, adjusting Tracy's dress and taking a long look at her before smiling softly. "I think tonight you're the director," he said. It wasn't loud praise, but to Tracy, it meant everything. Those words told her she was capable, that he believed in her completely. Then came a turning point. When Tracy was 17, Rob and Penny divorced, and the world she knew suddenly shifted. It was heartbreaking and confusing, and deep down she was scared she might lose another father figure. But Rob didn't walk away, not once. He stayed steady, calm, and present, proving that his choice to be her dad wasn't temporary, it was forever. Every weekend, he still showed up to pick her up, taking her out for ice cream or slow drives through their favorite old streets. He didn't let distance or change alter what they had. One day, during one of those quiet drives, he said gently, "Divorce is an adult thing, not ours. You'll always be my daughter. Nothing can change that." Those words became her strength, the anchor that kept her grounded through years that could have easily pulled her off track. As time passed, Tracy started exploring acting for herself. Rob never pushed, never sugarcoated the path as easy or glamorous. He just reminded her to chase what felt real and to always stay true to herself. Rob stayed the same, realistic, honest, and steady. He guided Tracy when she asked and trusted her when she didn't. He gave her space to grow, but always made sure she never felt alone. Every step of the way, he was there, not controlling, just quietly supportive. Sometimes Rob invited Tracy to appear in small film roles or little cameos, moments meant to teach, not to show off. In 1987, when Tracy appeared in The Princess Bride, Rob smiled from behind the camera and said with quiet pride, "My daughter has to be in a fairy tale film." It wasn't about fame or recognition, it was about sharing something special. When Tracy caught his gaze on set, it wasn't the look of a director watching an actor, it was the look of a father watching his child step confidently into her own world. In that second, she finally understood. Rob Reiner wasn't just her adoptive father on paper, he was the father, the one who chose her, stayed, and loved her with the kind of steady care that never faded. By the 1990s, Tracy had gotten married and started a family of her own. Rob slipped naturally into the role of grandfather, bringing that same calm warmth he'd always carried. He'd drop by on quiet afternoons, roll up his sleeves, and scoop his grandkids into his arms with that familiar smile. Come here, Grandpa's here," he'd say, softly, his voice wrapping the whole house in peace. He'd sit right on the floor, stacking puzzle pieces, laughing when the towers toppled, never in a rush to fix them. While the kids played, he'd tell them simple stories, late nights on film sets, laughter echoing through the kitchen, and those sweet memories of Tracy sneaking out of naps just to watch him write. "Your mom was stubborn back then," Rob joked with that familiar soft smile, but stubborn in the most lovable way. Sometimes Tracy would stand quietly in the doorway, just watching her dad with her kids, the way he gently wiped a little mouth clean, or the calm way he could soothe every tear. It brought a rush of memories flooding back. She saw herself in those same moments, small, tired, and always met with patience. One evening, when Tracy was running on empty, Rob placed a steady hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "You're doing really well. Being a mother doesn't mean being perfect, it just means showing up." Those words hit her deep, just like they always did. He had a way of grounding her, of reminding her that love was about presence, not perfection. Later that night, when the house had gone still and the kids were fast asleep, Rob and Tracy sat at the kitchen table under the soft glow of yellow light. Rob studied her for a long moment before saying with warmth in his voice, "I'm proud of you. You grew up strong, kind, and loving. I can see it in how you care for your family." Tracy leaned in, hugged him tight, and whispered, "Dad." Her voice was steady, sure, and filled with gratitude. What mattered most to her was that even after Rob built a new chapter of his life, she was never pushed to the sidelines. He always made sure she was part of everything, Family gatherings, dinners, even casual hangouts. He kept that bond alive, strong as ever. After Rob married Michelle Reiner and they moved into their Brentwood home in 1989, Tracy quietly feared losing her place. But that fear disappeared fast. She was constantly welcomed, invited over for dinners, movie nights, and even overnight stays. The first time Tracy stepped into Rob's new home, he greeted her with a warm smile and said, "This house will always be your home." Those words melted away every doubt she had been carrying. From that moment, she knew nothing had changed. She still had her place, her family, her safety. Michelle, Rob's new wife, wasn't distant or cold like Tracy had quietly feared. She was gentle, thoughtful, and full of genuine warmth. She asked Tracy what foods she liked, what routines made her comfortable, and she truly listened, without judgment, without hesitation. Slowly and naturally, their family grew, not by replacing anyone, but by expanding the love that was already there. Michelle had a way of noticing the smallest things, little details most people would miss. Once, when Tracy casually mentioned a soup her mom used to make, Michelle remembered it. The next weekend, she quietly cooked it and smiled, saying, "Your dad talks about you a lot." That moment said it all. Tracy realized then that love in this home didn't need to be loud or flashy. It just had to be sincere. Rob Reiner stood between the two most important women in his life, always keeping things steady and peaceful. He took pride in seeing all his kids, from different paths, gathered around one table, laughing and sharing stories. To him, family wasn't something defined by blood. It was something you built, day by day, with love and intention. Tracy remembered those cozy evenings when Rob held little Jake in his arms while Roy played on the floor. At one point, he looked around with a soft grin and asked, "Do you think our house being this noisy is fun?" Tracy laughed and nodded instantly, because yes, it was. It was home. The age gap never meant a thing. Tracy and her younger siblings played like best friends. They made up silly games, read stories together, and shared little secrets that filled the house with laughter. One afternoon, Roy wrapped her tiny arms around Tracy's neck and said sweetly, "I like you the most." Tracy burst out laughing, her heart melting as she felt like she'd been handed back a piece of the childhood she once missed. Jake was different. Older, a little quieter, but always gentle and kind. Every time Tracy visited, he'd rush to open the door before anyone else could, proudly calling out, "Tracy's here!" He loved showing her his drawings, telling stories from school, and soaking up her attention. Tracy saw something familiar in him, that quiet need to be noticed, to feel seen, the same feeling she'd once carried as a kid herself. But Nick was another story entirely. From the start, something about him felt different. He didn't talk much, choosing to stand apart rather than join in. His silence wasn't shy, it was distant, heavy, like he was somewhere else in his thoughts. Once, Tracy caught Nick staring at her. No smile, no words, just stillness. It made her uneasy, though she couldn't quite explain why. She glanced toward Rob for reassurance, but he was chatting with Michelle and didn't notice. Tracy never admitted out loud that she felt uncomfortable, but she quietly began to keep her distance, not out of dislike, but out of instinct. Something about the energy shifted when Nick was in the room. The air just felt heavier, quieter, like something unspoken lingered there. "Don't worry," Michelle had told her, and Tracy tried not to, but that uneasy feeling never completely went away. Years later, when Nick turned 15 and started struggling more noticeably, that quiet tension only grew heavier. Late at night, Rob would call Tracy, his voice slower, softer, missing that familiar warmth she'd always known. "I can't sleep," he whispered one night. "I keep thinking about Nick, wondering where I went wrong." Tracy stayed silent, just listening. She could hear the pain in his voice, the voice of a father blaming himself. Night after night, he'd share how he stood outside Nick's bedroom door, hesitating to knock, afraid of what he might find behind that silence. "I love all my children equally," he once said, his voice cracking. "But with Nick, I live in constant fear, afraid I won't know how to help him." Hearing that broke Tracy's heart. Rob's pain wasn't loud or dramatic, it was quiet and constant, the kind that wore a person down. And by then, Tracy understood it better than ever, because she was a parent too. When Rob once said, "Only when you become a parent do you understand what helplessness really feels like," Tracy nodded through tears, looking at her own kids sleeping peacefully nearby. She finally understood why Rob could never give up, no matter how tough things got. Some nights, she didn't try to fix anything. She just listened, letting him talk until the weight of his words settled. One night, Rob sighed and said softly, "I'd trade everything I have if my child could just live a normal, happy life." Tracy's eyes filled with tears as she whispered back, "I know, Dad. I'd do the same." In that moment, two generations of parents stood connected through shared understanding. No words needed, just pure empathy. What Tracy and Rob shared went beyond family ties. It was the quiet bond of two people who had carried each other through joy, heartbreak, and everything life could possibly throw at them. Their relationship stayed sacred for decades, untouched by time, change, or fame. No matter how packed their schedules became, that connection never faded. In 2017, Tracy proudly stood beside her dad during the hand and footprint ceremony honoring Rob and Carl Reiner at the TCL Chinese Theater. When Rob introduced her to the cheering crowd, his voice softened with emotion. "This is Tracy, my eldest daughter, the greatest joy of my life." The words made her tear up instantly. She squeezed his hand and whispered, "I love you, Dad. Thank you for choosing me." Through the 2020s, even with their busy lives filled with film projects and causes they both cared deeply about, Rob and Tracy still made time for each other. They'd meet at a quiet cafe near Brentwood for coffee or spend easy afternoons together at home, catching up like no time had passed. Rob always made sure she had his full attention, asking about her work, her life, and her happiness, like he was making sure no emotional distance could ever sneak in between them. But something changed in early 2025. One calm afternoon in January, Rob asked Tracy to meet him alone at a small restaurant in Los Angeles. When she arrived, she noticed it right away. His expression was serious, almost heavy. He sat there with a coffee in front of him, not even touching it. After a few minutes of light conversation, Rob grew quiet, then looked Tracy straight in the eyes and said softly, "Tracy, I need to tell you something important." His tone was calm but serious, the kind of voice that carried weight. He explained that he'd been getting his affairs in order for the future, planning everything carefully. His intention was clear, to divide everything he owned equally among his 4 children, Jake, Nick, Romy, and Tracy. "You are my eldest daughter," he said firmly. "Blood or not, you are equal to your siblings, and I want you included." Tracy froze, her heart pounding as tears welled up. Shaking her head, she whispered, "No, Dad, I don't need this. I've already received so much from you." She reminded him of all the love, guidance, and memories he'd given her. That was what truly mattered. Then, trying to lighten the moment, she suggested that her share could go to her siblings or be added to the family's charitable work instead. But Rob reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "No, my child," he said in that familiar, comforting voice. "This is my decision. You deserve it, and I want my will to reflect how I truly feel." His words were steady, warm, and full of conviction. Through tears, Tracy whispered, "I just don't want anyone thinking you're showing favoritism." Rob slowly shook his head, his eyes soft but certain. "I'm not choosing favorites," he said. "I'm just doing what feels right in my heart." After that emotional conversation, Tracy assumed the decision would stay private, something just between the two of them. It was their quiet understanding, sealed in trust. But as the months passed, little signs of tension began to ripple through the calm. At first, there was nothing but relief. When Nick returned home, Michelle Reiner hugged her son tightly, tears in her eyes, while Rob gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're home," Rob said softly. "We'll get through this together." For a brief, hopeful moment, the house felt warm again, like a family healing after a long storm. But just days later, that fragile calm began to crack. Nick happened to overhear a quiet conversation between Rob and his lawyer, a talk about the will. That was the moment everything shifted. Nick learned that Rob had planned to divide everything equally, 4 parts, one for each child, including Tracy. To Nick, who had long felt like he was struggling to find his place, the news hit hard. Old buried emotions came rushing back, feelings of being overlooked, unseen, and unsure. What started as quiet discomfort slowly grew to resentment, bubbling beneath the surface where no one could see. Tracy, unaware of what Nick had overheard, started to sense that something in the air had changed. Conversations grew shorter, his glances felt colder. The house, once full of laughter, felt heavier, quieter, like something unspoken lingered there. Then, one tense evening, everything boiled over. Nick stormed into his father's room, his voice shaking with emotion. "Why were you giving anything to Tracy?" he demanded. "She's not even your biological child. I'm your son. I need that money to get my life back on track." Nick let out a sharp, bitter laugh, his eyes cold in a way Tracy had never seen before. Years of frustration seemed to pour out all at once, raw and unchecked. In that moment, Tracy felt a chill run through her, not from the shouting, but from the heaviness in the air. It wasn't loud fear, it was quiet and deep, the kind that settles in your chest when something feels truly wrong. The home that once felt so safe suddenly felt tense and unfamiliar. Nick refused to calm down. He knocked things over, his voice rising before storming out of the house, the sound of the door slamming echoing through the silence. That silence afterward was worse than the noise. It was thick, heavy, and full of things no one dared to say. Later, Rob called Tracy and told her what had happened. His voice was weary, full of sadness more than anger. Hearing it made Tracy's chest tighten. "Dad," she said softly, her voice breaking, "I told you I didn't want to cause any problems in the family." "Don't worry, my daughter," Rob said gently. "I'll handle it." Still, Tracy couldn't shake the unease. The next day, she called him again, her words trembling. "Maybe you should change it back. I don't need anything." There was a long pause on the line before Rob finally spoke. "If I did that," he said slowly, "I'd be betraying the love I have for you." Those words hit her like a wave, final, unshakable, filled with emotion. Tracy never imagined that a decision made from love could reopen old wounds or spark emotions buried for so long. She couldn't have known how deeply it would affect someone already struggling inside. Rob had just finished sharing a funny behind-the-scenes story from years ago, the kind of memory only he could tell, and Tracy burst into laughter. For a moment, it felt like time hadn't touched them at all. Rob looked at her with that same warm, familiar expression she'd known since childhood, the one that always made her feel safe. Neither of them could have known it would be the last time they'd ever sit together like that. Before she left, Rob hugged her tighter than usual, his arms holding on as if trying to freeze the moment in place. He leaned in close and said softly, "You are the greatest gift life has ever given me." Tracy laughed through the tears that suddenly filled her eyes. "Dad," she said teasingly, "you always say things that make me want to cry." She walked out of the house that day feeling calm and full of love, carrying the image of her father exactly as she'd always known him, strong, steady, and full of warmth. But the next morning, December 14th, everything changed in an instant. The phone rang, short, sharp, and cold. The words on the other end didn't make sense at first. Rob was gone. Michelle Reiner was gone too. And then came the most painful part. The name mentioned in connection to what had happened was Nick. Tracy froze, her body refusing to move. Her thoughts collapsed into a blur of disbelief. All she could hear were her father's words from the day before, echoing over and over in her mind. "You are the greatest gift life has ever given me." In the end, all Tracy was left with was love, heartbreak, and the echo of her father's voice, the voice that told her she was chosen. The if-onlys hit her all at once. If only she'd stayed longer, if only she'd called one more time, but none of that could change what had already happened. Regret couldn't rewrite the truth, and beneath the crushing grief, a quiet anger burned. Not wild, but deep and steady. She couldn't accept that the father who loved her so completely, who protected her every step of the way, was suddenly gone. The man who gave her a last name, a home, and a place to belong was taken from the world, and the hardest part to face was how it happened. Every time that thought came up, Tracy's heart felt like it was breaking all over again. Nights passed without sleep, and the only thing she could hold on to was the memory of that final hug, tight, warm, and overflowing with love. Yet even through the waves of loss and anger, one truth remained unshakable. No one could ever take away the love her father gave her. Rob Reiner's love wasn't temporary. It was full, unconditional, and lasting beyond anything physical. That love didn't end when he was gone. It stayed, living in every corner of her memories, in every story he ever told her, and in every lesson he quietly taught through kindness. That love stayed with her, quiet, steady, and powerful, the kind that never needed applause or attention. Their bond didn't need big speeches or flashing lights. It was built through small things, hugs that lasted a little longer, gentle words that lifted heavy days, and moments when Rob stood beside her through every storm life sent their way. "I come from the greatest family I've ever known," Tracy once said, and in that family, Rob Reiner will forever be remembered as the father who turned a little girl from New Mexico into his daughter, not through blood, but through patience, kindness, and a love that never asked for anything in return. So now it's your turn to think about it. What truly makes someone a father? Is it shared DNA, or is it the choice to love, protect, and keep showing up no matter what? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your answer in the comments below. If this story about family, loyalty, and unconditional love touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who believes in love that goes beyond the spotlight. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for staying with us until the very last moment. Your support means everything. We'll see you in the next one, where we continue to share stories that remind us of what truly matters: love, family, and the choices that shape who we are.